Hello friends, have you ever noticed what happens to your body and mind when you get caught in the trap of overthinking? One thought leads to another. Your mind goes back to something that happened yesterday. Then, it jumps forward, imagining everything that could go wrong tomorrow. And before you even realize it, you are no longer experiencing the moment in front of you. You are living inside a constant stream of thoughts, and your body often responds to that mental tension. Your breathing may become faster, shallower, or less comfortable. Your muscles may tighten, you may feel restless, distracted, or unable to simply be still. This is because the mind and body are deeply connected. When the mind becomes unsettled, the body can reflect that disturbance. And when the body begins to settle, it can also become easier for the mind to settle. But there is something even deeper that we often fail to notice. Most of us spend so much time listening to our thoughts that we begin to believe we are those thoughts. A thought appears, and we immediately call it my thought. A fear appears, and we start believing that something is wrong. A memory appears, and we begin living inside that memory again. But what if there is another possibility? What if you can notice a thought without becoming the thought? What if you can observe the movement of your mind without being carried away by it? That question takes us to something very important, the difference between thinking and awareness. When you begin to notice your thoughts, instead of automatically following them, something subtle changes. You start to see that a thought is something that appears in your awareness. It comes, it stays for a while, and eventually, it changes or disappears. And if you can notice a thought appearing, then there must be a part of you that is capable of noticing it. You are not necessarily every thought that passes through your mind. You can experience the thought without having to become it. Imagine sitting beside a river and watching leaves floating on the surface. You don't need to jump into the river to understand where the leaves are going. You simply watch them pass. Thoughts can be approached in a similar way. A memory may appear, a worry may appear, a plan for tomorrow may appear. You don't have to fight any of them. You don't have to believe every one of them. And you don't have to push them away. You can simply notice. This is a thought. That simple recognition creates a little distance between you and the mental story. And within that distance, there is a possibility of choice. Instead of reacting automatically, you can observe. Instead of being pulled into the thought, you can remain present. But when overthinking becomes intense, simply telling yourself, stop thinking, usually doesn't work. The mind often becomes even more active when we try to force it into silence. So, rather than fighting the mind, we can begin with something much simpler. Something that is already happening naturally, your breath. Your breath is always happening in the present. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, right now. So, when your mind becomes overwhelmed by thoughts, gently bring your attention back to the physical experience of breathing. Notice the breath entering, notice the breath leaving, and here is the most important part. Do not try to control it. Don't force the breath to become deeper. Don't deliberately make it slower. Don't try to create a special breathing pattern. Just allow the breath to be exactly as it is. If it is short, notice that. If it is deep, notice that. If it changes from one moment to the next, notice that too. Your task is not to become the controller of the breath. Your task is to become the observer of the breath. At first, you may notice only the movement of your chest, or the sensation of air passing through your nostrils. Perhaps you notice the slight movement of your abdomen. There is no need to search for a particular sensation. Simply choose one natural aspect of the breath and stay with it. And whenever the mind wanders away, notice that too. You don't need to become frustrated. Just return to the breath. Again and again and again. This simple act of returning teaches your attention something important. You don't have to follow every thought that appears. You can come back, and there is a beautiful way to understand this practice. Imagine a guard standing at the entrance of a large building. People and vehicles come through the gate. The guard doesn't chase them. He doesn't try to stop every vehicle. He simply watches what enters and what leaves. You can develop that same quality of attention toward your breath. Imagine yourself as that quiet gatekeeper. The breath comes in, you notice it. The breath goes out, you notice it. You don't interfere, you don't judge, you don't try to make one breath better than another. You simply remain present, and something important begins to happen. Your attention is no longer constantly feeding the chain of thoughts. You are giving your mind another place to rest. Sometimes, as attention settles, the breathing may naturally become softer or more relaxed. But don't make that the goal. The goal is simply to observe. Because the moment you start thinking, my breathing should be slower, or why isn't my mind becoming quiet, you have already moved away from simple observation and back into control. So, return again, feel the breath, notice the breath, let it be. This is where the practice becomes deeper. You are not trying to create a perfect state. You are learning to stay with what is actually happening. And once you become familiar with this quality of neutral observation through the breath, you can begin to apply the same awareness to your thoughts. A thought appears. Instead of immediately following it, you notice it. A worry appears. You notice it. A memory appears. You notice it. A judgment appears. You notice that too. Nothing needs to be pushed away. Nothing needs to be held onto. You are simply watching. And now, the breath has done something important. It has not destroyed your thoughts. It has given you a stable doorway back into the present. From here, you can begin watching the mind itself. Now, when a thought arises, try something very simple. Don't fight it, and don't immediately follow it. Just observe it. Imagine that you are standing beneath a wide open sky. A cloud appears. You don't need to chase the cloud. You don't need to hold it in place. You simply watch it move across the sky. Thoughts can be observed in the same way. A worry about tomorrow can appear. A regret about yesterday can appear. A random judgment can appear. Even a thought about your own meditation can appear. Let it be there. Notice its presence. And then, notice what happens when you stop adding more thoughts to it. Because often, one thought is not the real problem. The problem begins when we continue the thought with another thought. What if this happens? Then what will I do? But what if that happens? Maybe I should. And suddenly, one small thought has become an entire story. Observation interrupts that automatic chain, not by force, but by removing your need to continue it. You may notice that some thoughts become weaker when they are simply observed. Others may remain for a while. Some may return again and again. That's okay. There is no need to measure your progress by how quickly a thought disappears. The practice is not about having a completely empty mind. It is about changing your relationship with what appears in the mind. You are learning to see a thought as a thought rather than immediately treating it as reality. And sometimes, after a thought has passed, you may notice something very subtle. For a brief moment, there is nothing you need to follow. No story, no analysis, just a quiet moment before the next thought appears. And this brings us to the most subtle part of the practice. Between one thought and the next, you may sometimes notice a small moment of silence. It may last only for a fraction of a second. Perhaps you notice it for a little longer. And sometimes you may not notice it at all. All of that is completely normal. Don't try to create the gap. Don't wait impatiently for the next thought to disappear. And don't turn silence itself into another goal. Simply notice those moments when they naturally appear. Because the real practice is not about producing a special experience. It is about becoming more aware of what is already happening. One thought comes, you notice it, it passes, you return to the breath. Another thought comes, you notice it again, and slowly you begin to discover that you don't have to be carried away by every movement of the mind. There can be thought, and there can also be awareness of thought. There can be noise, and there can also be moments of stillness. There can be uncertainty, and there can still be presence. With consistent practice, you may begin to recognize these moments of stillness more clearly. But remember, the goal is not to make the silence longer. The goal is not to stop thinking. And the goal is certainly not to escape from life. The real shift is much simpler. You are learning to stop fighting your mind. You are learning to stop believing every thought. You are learning to observe your breath without controlling it, to observe your thoughts without becoming them, and to return, again and again, to the present moment. Because peace does not always require the mind to become completely silent. Sometimes, peace begins when you no longer need the mind to be silent. You simply become the one who watches. And in that simple act of watching, you may discover something that was present all along. Not a perfect mind, not a thought-free life, but a quiet space of awareness right here in the middle of your ordinary experience.